Streaming and recording now.
Michael isn't recording.
Okay. Are we good?
You're good.
Okay, great. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. This is the meeting, joint meeting of Housing and Land Use. Today is Thursday, November 2nd, 2023, and we are starting at 7:09. My name is Hazel Mira. I am the chair of the Housing Committee.
And I'm Kenneth Gellick, I'm chair of the Land Use Committee. This is a joint meeting of both committees.
Robert Press, community member of the Housing Committee.
Yes, Oral Selkridge, co-chair, land use.
Malcolm Gray, Housing Committee.
Dan Dooling, Department of City Planning, Bronx office, here to present tonight. Hi all.
Christine Culpepper, and I'm on both committees.
Juan Jones, Housing Committee.
Edward Perez, Land Use.
I'm Brian Adams, guest speaker from a 49 Precinct Community Council, Sergeant of Arms.
Wendy L. Hewlett Betts, member of Land Use.
Thank you, everyone. We're not going to.
Jeremy, did you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Avril Francis, sanitary.
Okay. Any other board members up there?
Stacy.
I can't
Cynthia,
see.
I thought Cynthia-
Stacy De Leon.
Hi, Cynthia Rodriguez, Land Use.
Hold on, quick reminder, if you are on the committee and you're online, please put your cameras on.
You'll be marked excused or absent for whichever the committee chair decides for the meeting.
Any other members?
Miguel Dyer, CB11.
It looks like Juanita just joined.
Hi, everyone. Oh, are we doing introductions? Juanita Ranzel.
Yep.
What about Edgar?
Thank you, Juanita.
And Edgar.
Okay.
Yeah, Edgar's on the committee too, but doesn't have his camera on.
Just another reminder for the cameras. If not, then you will be marked excused or absent.
Yeah, what
I'm here. Give me a minute. I'm trying to put my camera on.
Cynthia's remote then, right?
Yeah.
Cynthia's remote.
So if you be here.
Okay, I'm just gonna start because we have a lot to go over. We can't review the minutes because they were not posted, but they were sent out. I hope everybody had a chance to look at them. And I'm just gonna go right into the presentation. So it's a City of Yes presentation by Mr. Dooling.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
There are actually two presentations. The first one, we're going to keep it short also because of time, and I want to give room for everyone also to ask questions and have a discussion. I think the first thing is something that I think first came up in the July meeting that you all had, and it was the request for a quick ULURP training, a quick overview. And that request came again, I think early last month. So that's where we're going to start off first. I think that's also a little bit of a primer maybe for the second presentation, but it's pretty short. We're just going to keep it, brief. We'll have a little bit of a discussion afterwards too.
Okay.
That's the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, sure. Whatever.
Just to make sure, can you all see me? My camera is on.
Yeah, we can see you now because we have the
Okay.
presentation up on the screen, but can
Thank
you all
you.
see your presentation as well? That's the most important thing right now.
Yes,
Can you all see the
read the
presentation?
presentation.
Okay, great. Well, again, a quick briefing on training on ULURP. ULURP is the public review process for land use changes in the city. It's specific for New York City. And again, we'll do a quick Q&A at the end. So what is that? ULURP stands for Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, and it is a process, a public review process by which land use proposals may become regulation. And I'll tell a little bit more about what land use proposals are a little later in the presentation. For this public review process, what is important is that there are sort of different ULURP players. There are different public bodies like a community board, but also the Bronx Borough President, City Council, the City Planning Commission, and the mayor of the city that all play a role in ULURP. It's a set process with set timelines, and where each of these sort of public bodies has the opportunity to host a public meeting, a public hearing, and to hear from community board members, but also from the community at large, from everyone who lives here or works here, to give their opinion on a land use proposal. And as a community member, you play an important role in that process because you will be able to attend those meetings, all of them. All those meetings are public. The city council meeting is public. The city planning commission is public. Your own community board meeting is public. And you can share your opinion there on a proposal, and you'll represent not only yourself, but also a community. And you can inform your community board, members on the committee here, members of the board, but also city planning commission and other elected officials to weigh in on what is proposed. So what is like a land use application? That is a package of documents that like describes a proposed project or proposed land use actions. That is a package that will become public online. Everything needs to be described, and that is what you will review, and that is what you will look at, and that's what you will opine on in the public review process. So what is then like what goes into a land use application? Well, first of all, who is proposing the actions? That can be a whole host of like entities, organizations that can propose an action. For instance, you might have a private developer, a private housing developer, for profit that wants to maybe rezone half a block somewhere in your community district and change the zoning there. That can also be a city agency. For instance, the agency that I work for, the Department of City Planning, when there's a city-led project. For instance, the Bronx Metro North Station Area Study is a city-led project where the Department of City Planning is the one proposing the actions. But you can also see institutions, for instance, can be public, can be like a Jacobi Hospital if they want to do something on their campus, can be a Montefiore, which is a private entity, like an institution that wants to do something. They can all propose those actions. And what do I mean by actions? That's like what we call a land use action. So that's like something that they apply for, and that's usually to change something about what is currently permitted. So you might, for instance, have a stretch of a block that is zoned for manufacturing uses, but maybe the manufacturing uses haven't been doing so well there, and there's a market for housing. Then someone, either a public or private, any of the parties that I just mentioned, they can come in and request that the zoning is changed to allow for different types of uses. And I already sort of like went over this a little bit, like why are the actions requested? It can be to facilitate a specific project. You have like land use actions as simple as maybe waiving a parking requirement, but it can also be a much bigger project, like changing the zoning in a much bigger area. So that are all the things like why an action can be requested. And that can sometimes be for a specific project, for something very specific. Again, like maybe to waive a parking requirement for an existing use, but it can also be maybe to change the land uses in a wider area. And of course, like the most important thing is also like, where is it proposed? So what you see in the land use application package is a lot of materials with maps, a tax map, an area map showing the surrounding neighborhood, showing the existing land uses. Like that is all what you'll see in that document. something aside from the land use application, another set of materials that you'll often see, especially for bigger applications that will like have more of an impact and touch upon a bigger area, is also environmental review. So if I just like go maybe for an example, I think the latest ULURP application that was in front of Community Board 11 was 2560 Boston Road, which was a rezoning of half a block on Boston Road near Allerton Avenue. There was like a private developer who wanted to change the zoning from what is like would allow for auto repair uses right now to what is like would allow for auto repair uses right now to ground floor retail with housing. And they were doing that for a specific project there in that area. So that's just an example, that like the most recent example for CB11. So an important thing is that with the review process, that it's set. You have what you can see on the screen from left to right. It goes in order. It starts with the community board, it ends with the mayor, and in between there are other players. That is a set order with set timelines. But before that process starts, there's something that we call certification. And certification, like that does not mean that a project is approved. But what that does mean is that the Department of City Planning, where I work for, that we looked at what is proposed and to make sure that the documents there, usually the applicant is not the city, but it's like a private entity. What we do is to review it to make sure that what enters public review is correct and complete, so that we do not have something enter public review that, you know, people can like spend time on reviewing and it's in the end it's incorrect, it's inaccurate, and like we can't move forward with it. Like, so we want to make sure that something that is correct goes in. So the public review process is the decision-making process. Certification is more that it's like technically correct. It doesn't say anything about the support. It's just that like what is in there is correct. It's not a value statement about what is proposed. It's just that what is proposed is correctly described and the materials are all like up to snuff before it enters public review. Next slide. So the uniform land use review process begins after certification. And like, this is the important part, like this is a set time. There's like, if you add everything up, all the, like the 60 days or 30 days, you'll get to about like a 7-month time period. It first starts with the community board after certification. Once it's certified, it's not immediately that the clock starts ticking. There is an amount of time, like it's, I think, up to 9 days where like all the materials will be submitted to the community board. And once everything is submitted to the community board for their review, that is when the 60-day clock starts. So not when the City Planning Commission, that's the entity that certifies an application, is not immediately then, but it starts within 1 to 9 days when all the application materials are sent to the community board. The community board then has 60 days to review. So usually what you'll see is that the applicant, the one proposing these land use changes, will come in front of like these two committees, the joint land use and housing committees, for a presentation. Then they will also like issue a motion that will go to the full board. Usually there, the applicant is also there to answer any questions, and there will then be a vote. And a similar process of a public hearing about a presentation from the applicant, you'll see that at every step. So after the community board votes on, and that can sometimes be when a proposal touches upon more than one community board, there can be multiple community boards involved. If that's the case, the next step is not just to go to the borough president, to Vanessa Gibson and her office, but also to the borough board. So if there are multiple community boards involved, it will also go to borough board. But normally, if it's only in one community district, for instance, Community District 11, it will just go to the borough president. The borough president has 30 days, will also do a presentation, a public hearing, and will also issue a recommendation. The next step is City Planning Commission, 60 days, same thing, a presentation, public hearing, and there will be a vote. And so on. City Council, the mayor has a slightly different role. It is a veto. So it's either the mayor decides to veto the proposal or not. So there's no public hearing or anything then. So this is just to summarize what I just went over. It's like each of the decision makers can request a presentation, they can ask questions. Then they will also have a public hearing, and that is not for the applicant to, defend their proposal, but it's to hear from others. That's for residents, for workers in the area and other stakeholders to share their opinion. That doesn't always need to be people who actually live in your district. It can be a broader group of people. People who work here. It can also be sometimes that unions, I've seen that they testify at a public hearing or ask questions. And what is important is in the end for the community board and for a committee to consider is like, how does the application fulfill their vision for the local community? So like, what is it that you have in mind? What will be a good future for your community? And does this application that's in front of you, does that match that vision that you have? Or do you have maybe things like concerns about that, things you would like to see change to better meet that vision? And after taking everything into consideration, there are two things. So the community boards, the borough president and the borough board, they have an advisory recommendation. So they issue a recommendation that everyone later on in the process, so the community boards are first, so they issue a recommendation that needs to be taken into consideration by the ones who are after that. So that's your borough president, that's your borough board if what is proposed touches on more than one community district. And then afterwards, also need to be taken into account by the ones who have a binding vote. And those are two, City Planning Commission and City Council. So this is a little bit about how you submit recommendations and what that actually means. So when you submit a recommendation, there are three things you can do. You can simply approve of what is proposed. You can simply disapprove of what is proposed, or you can recommend approval with conditions or modifications. So what does that mean is that you are okay with what is proposed, but you want to see certain changes made to what is proposed. So you're not like fully against it, but you want to see things changed in order for it to have your support. So you approve it with conditions, sort of the same as like you want the one applying, you want them to make changes to what is proposed, or you want maybe other decision makers later in the process who have a binding voice to tell the applicant, you need to change this. And that recommendation will go through the whole process and will inform other decision makers. So I think one important part is for those conditions and modifications, you can approve or disapprove. That's very clear. If you just simply approve, disapprove. When you have concerns about it, and some proposals impact a bigger area or might just be impactful in general, it is important to be clear about what those conditions are. What do you want to see changed? Who should change that? And also, like, is it a little bit within the scope of what is proposed that can actually be changed? Like, you cannot, like, sometimes there's like a proposal maybe to rezone like a small stretch, like creating like building a new school is like hard for anyone to like make a condition of approval if it's like small scale project. Let's say you have like a parking waiver, like you cannot ask for the world to be factored in as like a condition, but it's important to have like clear actionable conditions and modifications as part of your recommendation. So it's very clear who needs to respond to that and what they need to do in order to have your support. And this can sometimes be a little bit tricky. So this is some resources for submitting recommendations. Everything goes through a portal. The portal is linked here at the top, and you need to log in for that to submit a recommendation. Well, yeah, for obvious reason. Otherwise, anyone can, on behalf of any community board, submit a recommendation. Each community board has one designated, what we call land use participant. So there is one person for community board 11. I don't know from the top of my head. I saw a list, but I think that's from like 2018, so it might be a different name. So there's one designated person for community board 11 who can log in and who can submit the recommendation. And there are a lot of videos, there are a lot of resources there. That's also linked here. You all have the presentation, so feel free to like share that with everyone. But you can also just call us or send us an email if something goes wrong. I think this is just like for any new Euler application that comes in front of you, important to make sure that you're actually able to log in time so that doesn't become like a huge issue at the end of your 60-day review period. One last thing. So this is just a very quick Euler trainer training. There is, as you all know, we had also like events at Van Nest, at Parkchester, at Morris Park in the last like month around Bronx Metro North station area study. That is something that you can expect to enter the public review process in the new year. What we're gonna do is later this month, the date has to be finalized yet, but I think later this month or early December, there will be, before any public review process starts, before anything is certified for Bronx Metro North Station area study, there will be a bigger event, a bigger ULURP training, and an overview of the proposal, but mostly also an overview of the public review process, not just for Community Board 11, but also for Community Board 10 and 9, because the proposal for Bronx Metro North Station area study impacts all 3 community boards. So that is to give everyone insight on how they can participate in the public review process for that specific project. So then we'll go over everything in more detail and more specifically focused on that proposal, because we want to make sure that everyone knows what the process is, and that everyone also knows how to participate in all these different meetings, and that's like clear ahead of time before we start the public review process. So we're not like, no one has to play catch up during the process, because, you know, as you saw on that one slide, we have all these set timelines. So it's good to know when the 60-day will start, and not like in day 40, realize that your voice needs to be heard. Any questions?
I have a couple.
Yeah, of course.
So on the certification, you said GCP documents for application. So the clock begins when DCP has given all of those documents to the community board, correct? That's what you said?
Yeah.
What are those documents exactly?
Yeah, okay. So every 2 weeks on Monday, there's what is called the City Planning Commission has a review session. That is for applications, when those applications are certified, like that is the moment that it gets certified. Then all the materials will get sent out to the community boards, and then is when the 60-day clock starts ticking. So the meeting is like notice, so it's like it will go out publicly. It's also a public meeting that you can watch on YouTube. You can also attend in person. Like there's like, it's all transparent. So there will be an agenda. It will be announced when like any specific proposal for your community board will like be up for review session, will be up for certification, which will be the start of ULURP. What you'll see in the materials, and I mean, if we have internet here, I can also like pull something up. So there's the zoning application portal. That is a portal where all the information is at. So you'll see everything from all the environmental review documents. Maybe that's a future training on environmental review. But that's like a whole, like that looks at the environmental impacts of what is proposed. So anything from transportation, parking, to the impacts on schools, the impacts on like parks and open space, you name it. There's like 20 different chapters.
But there will be like a, you know, a moment where somebody says you have everything that you need. The clock begins though.
Yeah, so that's so like staff at the Department of City Planning, after we review everything, there's like from drafts and then like a sort of a final version where the applicant has to like address like comments from our agency, but also sometimes from other agencies. When that everything is like correct and accurate, then we say, okay, this application is ready to be certified because we think it's accurate. And
is there a specific person in the CB11 board or the staff, the office people that you give that to, or you send that to?
Yeah, so like I am our agency's liaison for Community Board 11, but like it's a lot more people, a lot more agencies are involved with like all these applications. So we have like technical review staff that will look at like drawings. There will be people.
No, but what I mean is,
Yeah.
who in CB 11 is going to get those documents?
Yeah, so that will all be sent out by so two things. Like first of all, there's like an email goes out before it's certified, at least 30 days before it's certified. All the community boards through the general community board email address get a notice that like for 30 days or more, like ahead in the future, you can expect this project to come along.
Will that go to Jeremy, the district manager? Or something
I do not know who has like access to that email. It's like the general like Bronx CB11 at I don't know, like NYC.org.
It would go to Jeremy, and the chair.
Okay.
And you normally will get it, it's a pipeline, like a calendar to tell you what's gonna trickle down in your district, estimated time frame, considering anything can happen in city council.
I know you said there was like a website you go to review that stuff. What is it?
Yeah, I can type it in and
You can go on city council's website and they have live view
Oh, really?
and decipher which one you might want to peek into.
Okay, that makes
It's
sense.
live.
So I'll be playing with that in the future.
So here,
Zola.
so Zola shows the zoning and land uses. This is a different portal. The one is Zola is like maps and a lot of information about buildings and zoning. This is about like application specific. So here you can see, for instance, like what is filed and completed, but like we can look at your community district and you'll then see everything that was a project here and for the last like I don't know 20 years or so.
Wow. It's cool.
So there you go. I need some time to. All right. So, well, we talked about this one as an example. So this is 2560 Boston Road. Here is a short description of what is proposed. So I'm not going to do a whole presentation on Boston Road, but just to like sort of for like navigation purposes. Here you can see like the public documents. So here's the last one. Like the last version is obviously best to look at. Like the last full package was this one. These are all the materials that we require an applicant to submit as part of an application. If parts of this are missing, then we don't certify it. We don't have it enter public review because it's incomplete. So what you'll see here is like a lot of maps, a lot of photographs of how the area looks like right now, and a project description that gives like a good overview of what is proposed, what the area is like right now, and what is sort of the reasoning behind these changes. Why should it be deemed, a good proposal? Other things that you have here, you have a lot of, for instance, a racial equity report. That's something that is required now for the last 2 years for projects that are over a certain like size threshold, but also the EAS, which is the environmental review document, which is something that is pretty lengthy to read. I can just like it's already 50 megabytes. So this is just like I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but like I'll just go to the table of contents if there is one. But like I think this already gives like a good overview of everything that you can see. Let me just zoom in a little bit for people. So here you can see this is not just for Boston Road. This is in general for all proposals that are of a certain size. If like someone has a parking waiver for 5 spots, you're not going to do a whole environmental review, but for sort of your average projects, average like rezoning, you'll see this. So it's like from land use, zoning, and public policy. It's community facilities. It's like school impacts, open space. So like playgrounds, parks, shadows. Like will any new potential buildings cast a certain shadow? Like on and on to transportation. That includes parking, traffic study, air quality. Like everything, you name it. Like it's like I think 20 chapters that you'll see in here. 20 specific impacts that are considered and studied for what it means.
And that's
for this
in
proposal.
ULURP?
Yeah, this will, so if,
Oh, does it overlap the SEQR?
it will follow ULURP, so it will enter ULURP with that.
Okay.
So it's like all that information will come out together. And not
SEQR
like,
and then ULURP will all come out together with.
yeah,
the
it, like,
document,
it,
right?
it matches.
So I have a quick question then. This goes through the Office of Environmental Coordination?
Like
the
like
process
the,
itself,
the mayor's office.
The CEQR.
Yeah, they
process.
coordinate that for the city. Yeah.
So is there a website where we can see any new filings? And I guess the other question is, if somebody files for that, is that a good indicator that it would end up in the ULURP process, or is that done for like a variety of other things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there is another portal that shows like environmental review documents. It's called Seeker Access. But what enters public review would be available on this website too. So like the full document is available here, and we only like upload like certified materials and not like earlier drafts that like the applicant or their environmental consultant still needs to do like work on to get it ready. Sorry, your second question.
So if it appears on the CEQR website, is that a good indication that it will end up in the ULURP process?
Yeah, so what happens, you'll see it here is like LU stands for land use. So filed land use package. There are earlier drafts, but when it's filed, then the applicant also needs to pay fees to the city for like to pay for the review cost of everything. So when they do that, it's like also they have addressed, like they have first done a draft on which we have commented, and then they go to the next step to file and pay fees. That means that they are pretty serious. There are not a lot of applications that after filing and paying fees, like they just withdraw because they like lose quite a bit of money. So it's like a big like decision point for an applicant to do that.
So any document, let's say before this, is essentially a draft that hasn't been vetted or anything.
Yeah, so that we don't want to like circle around to, because like very often on those drafts, like the reviewing city agencies like are not on board with what they see in those documents. So it still needs to go through revision loops in order to get there. And yeah, there are also proposals that are in a very like in the early phases will come to us, but will never enter public review because the organization or the person behind it like will not like go through the whole process. They will just like stop. Like sometimes they have a business idea maybe or another idea, but it never like really comes to fruition.
Right. Do they have a EJ report for this center, or they're not doing that? An environmental justice report is going to be part of this ULURP process, or it's not done here?
I'm not aware of a specific environmental justice report.
It's a new thing that they're starting to do with.
Yeah, no, I know it's for like I think also for like federal projects is a thing, but
EJ NYC, right, New York City. You don't have it. You don't know about that.
No.
Okay.
Now, projects can change once they leave the community board, correct? And has this project changed? Because I'm told it went from 10 stories to 12. Is that true or not?
Not that I know.
Okay, so it hasn't gone to 12, it's still at 10.
Well, so the thing is like after, like that's an interesting question, although like, yeah, we can briefly talk about this one. I think what you'll have to see is that specific actions are what is like it goes into the public review, not always like a specific project. So like here, what you'll see is like there were two things that this applicant applied for. That was to change the zoning to an R72 district with the C24 overlay. So like a lot of it is C8, which is like an auto use zoning district, to something that would allow basically ground floor retail with mixed use like residential on top. The other thing is MIH, which is like you would have 30% of units would have to be made affordable. Then those actions like would facilitate a specific proposal. That proposal that you see here, a new 9-story, like that is a specific proposal, but like what is in ULURP is not that specific proposal. Those are just the land use actions. So for the city to change the zoning and to map that mandatory inclusionary housing area, so
Which
to have
Which
a
includes
requirement.
additional height for that.
Yeah, that is true. And but not the specific proposal. So in the end, when the zoning the zoning has changed and that mandatory inclusionary housing area is mapped, then basically any future development that meets the requirements of that new zoning can get built. They could also turn it, for instance, into a single-story commercial building if they wanted to, because it's fine with zoning. The commercial overlay would allow for that. So I think that is a really good question, because I think that is sometimes the and that's like easy to understand. You'll see pictures of a new building, but it's not actually the thing that is like approved or not.
Because I was on board 8 and that happened to us.
Yeah.
When the project from EDC changed after it left the community board.
Yeah.
And we had no more input on it.
Yeah, so sometimes the pictures that you see doesn't necessarily need to get built. Like if like the changing the zoning is approved, I mean, we have throughout the city, we have seen areas being rezoned where the developer never built a project. So it's also like that is sometimes a little bit like a source of confusion.
But depending on where the project is within the ULURP process, we are able to go to the borough president, or let's say city council or city council member, and say, well, we're noticing that this is changing. Can you reel it back in or make the proposals that we think are better fit?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So like when it enters ULURP, is that both we have the community boards, the borough president, and then the city planning commission and the city council. The city planning commission and city council can modify what is proposed.
Okay.
So they can say like, no, I don't know, like this specific zoning district is not what we want to see. We're going to change it to zoning district.
How can we get, how can we get the updates of future changes made to the project? So like, we're like constantly, notified when something is being changed.
Yeah, so I can, if I go back to the portal, well, I'm in the portal, but like you'll see here, you'll see everything from like this doesn't go into like what has happened, but this is like this shows for every step of the way like what happened. So you'll see here that the Bronx Borough president held a hearing on next date and then like voted on it. Then it went to the city planning commission. But you will have to look at this like at the certain proposals are also in the news like in Bronx Times or whatever, but like you will have to follow the portal to see like because everything is set in time, like you kind of do know when it's gonna be at like the city planning.
A frame there, right? Between 30 days, then 60 days.
So
in all honesty, it's about relationships.
Right.
Right. And the system is not set up like the BIS,
Mhm.
the
Right.
building information system, where everything is kind of live.
Right.
And you see like if a stop work order Y, and then you can kind of go in the files.
Right.
It's not that open like that, the Zola system. So it's all about, you have to manually follow and count your own window.
Right.
And then it's about relationships,
Right.
right? So, somebody may be able to go down to city council or an agency to figure out exactly where you're at.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Yeah, so you'll follow like everything. It's more focused on the outcomes.
Right.
So like you have 60 days, then like community board 11 like issues a recommendation. You'll see the recommendation.
Okay.
But what you will see is that like you'll see the dates of the public hearing and all those like public meetings need to be like noticed. So, but like in the end, everything is public and everything is like noticed and announced. But like it's of course like kind of on if you want to participate, it's a little bit on you to make use of those opportunities and say like on top of it in terms of like, oh, the meeting is next week. Okay, then I need to speak up at that
And
meeting.
one last question. What
Yeah.
if our city council person, right, doesn't vote for the project? What happens?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Is that it is city council has like a majority vote, but there is a thing that is not like law, and that is like there was like deference to the local council member.
Right.
So, for instance, there is I don't know, let's say somewhere in Brooklyn, there's a Brooklyn city council member that says like, no, I don't want it.
Right.
Technically, if all the others would vote yes, then it happens because it's like a majority vote.
Right.
But they tended to be like that every city council member for their own district, that they would sort of defer to that person to like, okay, it's your district and you
They
know
don't have
best.
to.
But they don't have to. Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay. Just wanna figure it out.
Are there any other questions? I know also like this is a lot to go over in one go, but like again, later this month or early next month, there will be a bigger info session, probably remote, to give everyone opportunity to tune in specifically for the public review process that will start probably in the new year, like early new year, for the Bronx Metro North Station area study. So that's like another moment where we go into detail about that process specifically.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And it's just maybe a stupid question.
No.
Let's say I want to change the zoning and I put in my application and everything.
Yeah.
And the mayor is totally against. And do you guys know where he stands before any of this? Because, it seems like you don't want to waste your time or my time if it's going to get to him and then he's just going to veto it.
Yeah.
And if he does veto it, is there like a fair hearing or something? Or can the city council overturn?
Yeah, so city council can overturn. They then have to, like, I don't know from the top of my head, but they have to have like a certain like majority, like I think more than just like half plus one.
Yeah.
And then they can overturn that veto. I think that has to happen within like a limited number of days. Aside from that, like, it happens rarely that a mayor like vetoes proposals.
So I would say, Hazel, the most important position within lower government for us is city council, because attached is land. They control land.
Okay.
So it matters who is your city council rep, because they control land. So that's the one you want to be friends with.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's why it's all about relationships.
You're right.
It's true.
Thank you.
Up to city of us. City of us.
I don't know if there are any other questions or from the.
Yeah, do we have
We
any?
maybe look at the chat,
No?
like if there's anyone in the chat.
That's not true. 1 second.
No, I saw things in the chat.
Yeah, I did see it too, but
It's the other one.
Okay.
right there.
Oh my goodness, have we been offline? all the
no,
time?
we're online. All right, sorry guys.
Oh,
Not comments, but no question.
Okay.
oh, blue and yellow dots. So
Just thoughts.
Okay.
Thank you, Kay.
Yeah, I think I do see one question about 1682 Stillwell Avenue. I think I've provided updates to the housing committee a couple times on that like I have checked and with Department of Buildings, because like previously a shelter site was proposed, so I've talked to Department of Homeless Services, but they don't have an update. So I'd like, and it's indeed, as Diana Finn said, like would be an as of right project. It's not something that Department of City Planning is involved with, but I checked with other agencies, but I just don't have an update other than what is like in the like BizWeb, like in the Department of Buildings like portal that's available to everyone. So I don't have like more information there. I followed up a couple of times. I think the first time it came up was like earlier this year, like I think in the early spring, but I just don't have an update on that. And Also to Diana's point, it's not anything there would be a ULURP. If that would be ULURP, then I would know, and then they would want to change the zoning for that, and that would be a whole process as we just discussed.
I can give you a little update on that. There was a meeting that I was at. It is now back in the hands of Department of Homeless Services since it is looking to be a senior center, hopefully. It's a 200 unit facility. The rooms will be split, where 200 people will be occupying it.
It's not a senior center, it's a isn't it a?
Senior living.
home? Yeah.
Senior living.
And when was that like shared?
This was shared.
That's not confirmed. though.
It's
It's talked about.
right. The owner of the property has spoken to a local elected official on it who is familiar with the owner and is trying to get this done.
But it's not confirmed.
There's more.
It's
It's
in
not
the
confirmed.
works.
It's not confirmed.
It's semi-confirmed. Okay.
It's not confirmed.
All right. Any other questions?
It's a little hard sometimes to trace back where we were at in the discussion. But,
It's Stillwell, Euler.
yeah.
Oh, well, that's how we got there. All right, cool.
All right, so is the other, are you gonna do the other presentation or is?
Yeah,
okay.
no, that's me too.
Okay,
They'll have me for the full evening.
Glad to have you.
Let's see. All right. So
nothing.
Is that is it a 91-page presentation? This one? No, right?
no, so
It's online.
but it's a good question though. And some more stuff.
That one was forever.
All right.
It was 2 hours. We know that presentation.
So, City of Yes for Economic Opportunity. This is, just to start off with, this is a proposal that does not only like affect Community Board 11 in the Bronx, it affects the whole city. It's like a citywide change to the zoning resolution. So to the regulations that are in the zoning resolution, it would affect mostly commercial areas, like areas that are zoned with commercial zoning, for instance, Morris Park Avenue right here. It would affect
commercial underlays or just commercial?
Commercial overlays and also
Sorry,
commercial districts.
Okay.
But I know we're also at 8 o'clock, and I think it's important to go over things like, you know, also have an opportunity for like questions and answers. I know this is a proposal that it touches upon a lot of different things. It covers a lot. And I do realize that. And this was referred out to the community boards this Monday. It's now Thursday, so you're very early on in your review period. There is more than enough time for me, in whatever shape or form you guys want, to come back and answer questions.
Great.
Like I do not expect me to sit here for 20 minutes and you'll be like, okay, like, you know, all makes sense. Let's go on. You know, like there's time within this 60-day time period to just like talk about this more. So I think what I want to do tonight is just give an overview of the proposal.
Fantastic.
Have time for questions and answers, and maybe not go into everything right now, but maybe more for me to take note of the questions that are there, specific concerns that you have, because there is a moment that I can also come back, because there's a 60-day time clock that runs into like early January. So there is time for also me to come back in December to have like maybe a more focused discussion on specific parts of the proposal that you want to talk about. Certain parts of the proposal, like specific zoning districts that are not even mapped in Community Board 11. So, you know, maybe we skip over those in a next like follow-up, and we focus just on the ones that are relevant to
That sounds
this
good.
district. So we have time. I know it's a lot, so I just want to like recognize that.
That's good.
Yeah.
One
Yeah, sure.
Every so often I hear about that we can delay that there's a possibility of delaying our recommendation. Is there any possibility of doing that? And can we get an extension of time to give our recommendation?
I don't think at this point that has been decided, that would affect not just only community board 11, that would like affect all community boards in the city. I think that would be something that is like way above my pay grade to make that decision to
Who would we contact about that?
I can relay that to people within my agency, within the Department of City Planning. But yeah, I think that like, yeah, this is again like a very comprehensive proposal. We're here on like November 2nd. I think like let's use the follow-ups and see where we can go. But yeah, that would be like a citywide thing and a much bigger decision.
I would just say that if you're gonna do that, we better have a good reason.
100%.
Because we have to look at reputation, and this is something uniform across the map, because you're requesting a change, like he said, affects all of the community boards, borough-wide. So we don't want to be that community board that is asking for time for.
It's fine, I just wanted to ask.
Wait, but we're not
Put
the,
it on the record.
it's not us. We received a letter from, I don't know, one of the community boards.
Yeah, I'm over
That they wanted to extend, and they're trying to get all the community boards to sign on to.
Yeah,
this letter.
I've heard of that letter, yeah.
Yeah, so, but
they would need to really explain.
yeah,
why.
I'm on the fence on that. I think like you said, I think we have enough time to make a recommendation, especially where we are, I don't know if, Bernadette mentioned to you, but we would like to have a public hearing on this, so you might be coming back.
All right, yeah, no, but like what I said, like more than
Yeah.
happy to like come back and
This is something that the community needs to know about, and
Yeah.
we need input from everybody.
yeah, I think like let's like after I give a little bit of like the like, you know, just give like a high level overview of the proposal. Let's discuss like next steps later.
Yeah.
I do think because it was only like referred out by the city planning commission like on Monday, it's now Thursday, like we're really at the very early end of that time clock, luckily, so because of like your meeting schedule.
Yeah.
And let's just like use that.
I know we didn't get recognition for the housing section, not housing, sorry, carbon neutrality section.
Yeah, that's right.
Can we still go back and review it and get a recognition out from the board, or is that like this is missed out entirely?
Yeah, just to be blunt, I think that like it's now like city council, like before you would like catch up with that, they're probably already voted on, because like again, like that's a little bit the thing, it's just like what I went over like before, like it's like all these like time clocks.
Right.
So just like there's like the thing is just like it moves on. But the history of that was like before ULURP was like implemented in the city, there was like sometimes hard also for anyone proposing a project to know, like it would sometimes take years. So like that's why it just keeps moving, but that like makes it hard if you don't use that 60-day window to like catch up, because there's not really catching up, because then the next like the borough president or the city planning commission or city council just has to review the proposal without seeing a CB11 recommendation.
Well, we're not gonna do that again.
All right.
So let's get into it.
Yep. Okay.
Fantastic.
I need to catch up a little bit. So, city of yes for economic opportunities, one of three. Like, well, here you can see it, what we just discussed. One of three citywide changes to the zoning resolution for three different goals. One is for carbon neutrality. That is very much related to climate and reducing carbon emissions. That is in public review, but that has gone into public review before. As I just said, I think it's now at city council. The
Hi.
other one.
Hello, sorry, we can't see the presentation.
Oh,
You're not sharing it.
No, thanks
sorry,
thanks for
sorry.
playing.
Where is it? All right, can you see now? Can you see it?
Yes, we see it.
Let's do presentation mode.
Thanks.
Can you still see it?
Yes.
That's great.
Sorry
So
about that.
the second citywide proposal is for economic opportunity. That's focused on growing jobs and small businesses with more flexible zoning. So making changes to the zoning rules to allow for that. The third one is for housing opportunity. That is expected to go into public review, I think later in like April or May of next year. There was a scoping meeting for like to start environmental review for the housing opportunity one. I think it was on Monday. You can look at the recording of that. But I just want to like table that for the rest of the evening. There is a whole lot of process for that later on. And there's a lot of information online. I can share that out with the board for awareness, but that's like, will come later. Next, all right, I can also, so this is the engagement process to date. So on October 30th, so that was this Monday, there was a referral and the start of the public review process. But before that, for the last like year and a half, there was a lot of engagement. There were info sessions that were available to the public for anyone to ask questions. But we also did outreach with like business organizations. We reached out to, or we had meetings, like that was more about like developing the proposal, to hear from like business owners and business organizations, like what are now the issues that you're running into or that your constituents are running into with zoning for like locating in a new area, for maybe expanding their business. That is all what we discussed in like, or like had outreach for in the year and a half leading up till today. Some organizations that we spoke with that are in the Bronx is the Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation. We spoke with the Bronx Chamber of Commerce. We spoke with several business improvement districts, including Morris Park BID. I know that Camelia is, I think, also on the line today. So we also spoke with the South Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation. We spoke with a lot of organizations and businesses to better understand their needs and what we would need to sort of change with our zoning to be of service to them. So these are the things that, you know, we have heard, like, you know, there are in certain places in the city on certain commercial corridors, there's maybe a lot of vacancy. Like the pandemic has changed a lot about the places that we go to. Maybe your neighborhood is a little busier because people work from home. Other areas in the city, for instance, like Midtown and Financial District, have become a lot quieter with work from home. So a lot has changed to like our local businesses in the last couple of years. But there are also other reasons, like sometimes in certain buildings, you cannot have an office on the second floor. Sometimes a bakery has a real limit on how big their actual baking area can be, which is just a limitation for those businesses. And sometimes when you run into that, you have to maybe locate somewhere else. And as a neighborhood or as like a commercial street, you might lose a business that you really appreciate and that you go to. So these are the things that we heard sort of at like a very high level. And a lot of that has to do that most of the zoning in our city dates back from 1961. And in 1961, the kind of businesses that were there on your commercial streets are a little bit different than what they are now. So, you know, we just have, you know, new businesses come up that our zoning doesn't always allow for or makes it easy to locate close to you. So how do we achieve this? So there are like 4 overarching goals. And the first one is to make it easier for businesses to find space and to grow. And the main way we propose to do this is by lifting zoning barriers so businesses can locate closer to their customers. So also to make it easier to locate maybe in commercial areas and not only in faraway manufacturing districts, but closer to the actual people who make use of those businesses. And second, we want to support growing industries by reducing obstacles for emerging business types, which can help emerging businesses thrive across the city and create jobs. Again, like what I said, like most of our zoning is from 1961. There are a lot of industries that have like come up since then, and that our zoning doesn't always make it like doing a good job of allowing for that. Third, we want to foster vibrant neighborhoods by ensuring that businesses can contribute to active, safe, and walkable streets. And last, the fourth goal is we want to create new opportunities for businesses to open in the future, and by creating new kind of zoning tools that can boost growth and business expansion in all 5 boroughs. And these are the 18 proposals that are like, you know, looking to attain those 4 goals. They're sort of grouped in those 4 categories. I will go through each of them in more detail. And again, like this is just today, a little bit more of a primer. I think what we can do at like a next meeting is not just give an overview, but also zoom in on specific proposals that are outlined here. I'm sure that like some of the proposals might more like pique your interest than others, and we can like talk about them in more detail.
Will we be getting a copy of this?
Yeah, I already sent it over, but like you should feel free to just like distribute that. And I can also, there's a lot of information on our webpage, and I'll share that with you
Okay.
too. It's like recordings from previous thing, but also explainers, like one pagers about specific proposals to like make it accessible for everyone.
Right, thank you.
So, you know, here, like, I'll just speak to like very high level, and then we'll like go into a little bit more detail. But yeah, you can see, make it easier to find space and growth. There are a number of proposals there. Yeah, let me just like go in to what that is. So the first one is then to make it easier for businesses to find space and grow by lifting zoning barriers so that businesses can locate closer to their customers. And in most cases, our zoning rules governing businesses have not been updated since the early 1960s. And it's a long past due to update our zoning to reflect and respond to today's economy and today's businesses. And these 6 proposals that are on the screen right now do that. It's mostly to make zoning more simple, more adaptable, and more modern so businesses can easily locate and grow. So proposal number 1 is that today's storefronts that are deemed non-conforming, and I'll say what that means. Those are storefronts that are in an area that doesn't necessarily allow for a business to be there. So what you'll, for instance, see, just an example here, is on Morris Park Avenue, everything pretty much is zoned for commercial, but there are a couple blocks that are not. And there you still have storefronts because those storefronts were there before the zoning resolution, our current zoning resolution, came into place. So those are businesses that were there in the 50s. So those uses, an older use, when there's new zoning in place, they can continue. But when your storefront then closes, there is a rule that once that storefront closes and is vacant, because I don't know, maybe the owner moved somewhere, maybe he like quit his business, whatever. Once that storefront is then closed, there's like a time frame to it. Like when like after the time frame is over, you cannot turn it back into a store again.
So no grandfathering in.
Yeah, it's sort of like a time clock on the grandfathering. It's like, okay, like, okay, when you then stop, then like the grandfathering is then over. You can like sort of like restart the grandfathering of that use. But what you then have is like that storefront. It's like not that easy to turn it into something else. Like it's usually like in a residential zoning district, and it's quite difficult to turn it into like a home. You can see it maybe a little hard to see on the screen, but for instance, like imagine like a deli or something. It's like not that like, oh, like a quick fix and you have a residential unit. So it's really expensive for the property owner to do then something with it. And then you'll just see that those storefronts remain vacant for a long time and not do anything. So the second proposal, that in many places of the city, we have similar zoning districts that are located along the same corridor or on opposite sides of the street, and yet allow different kinds of businesses. So most of your commercial streets, like in your neighborhood, are zoned either C1 or C2. Also Morris Park Avenue, but also Allerton, Leidig Avenue, Williamsbridge Road, White Plains Road have this type of zoning. But it's the C1 allows for something different than for the C2. But for example, on stretches of Allerton Avenue, Williamsbridge Road, what is allowed on one side of the street doesn't match what is allowed on the other side of the street. Well, we can like, you know, just sort of experience that street to be one thing on opposite blocks of the same street. So what we're looking to do is to update those rules to make it possible for business to open up in neighborhoods with similar zoning districts. So basically have to C1 and C2 match each other because we don't see the difference really.
But let me ask you something, didn't we do that so you wouldn't have like, so every store wouldn't be like a nail place? So you would have different stores?
A variety.
Because I remember when I was a kid, you know, you had one supermarket, you had one deli, you had one meat market, one clothing store, that was it. But now it's like every other, you know, if you go up Gun Hill Road, every other store is a nail place. So Is
Um,
that what you're trying?
No, it's not for that. I think what is hard is that right now it's like it's more limiting what you can do in a C1 and a C2. So then like having like both sides of the street be like regulated differently, it becomes like very restricted because when then like a storefront opens up, then certain businesses can go in there who want to go there. But it's a good question. I'll get back to you on that. Like if there's like a specific, like if it was originally intended to sort of like have a little bit of a spread of types of businesses.
Yeah, but the reason why that was done, right, was because there had to be a boundary line where you change from one zoning area to another zoning area, right? So that split, instead of going to a property, they put it down the street,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes if you put it down a property, then you have a split zone within the property.
No,
That
that's
didn't
right.
make sense.
Yeah.
So it was put down the street because from this side to this side, we had a certain zoning. And you have to stop the zoning to continue to another zoning because over there was manufacturing, whatever it was. So if you're going to do that, then how far does that begin to spread in that C2, C1 zone?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't worry about it now, but that's the reason why it was done.
Okay.
That's all.
So the third proposal is that despite changes in technology, and we have a very different economy right now than back in 1961, our zoning rules are stuck in that era at times with how they treat many kinds of maker businesses. So at the time, manufacturing also played a very different role in the city than it does now. And a lot of like smaller scale clean production was like a pottery studio, a coffee roaster, a bakery, a jewelry maker, or a 3D printer. All those things are not now able to locate on a commercial street. You have to go into bigger manufacturing zones where small scale businesses just have a hard time finding a spot. So that is one change. The other thing is that, you know, if one of those clean production businesses would want to move into an empty office building, and today they would have to face rules that require them to add additional loading docks, even if they don't need them. And also the building might have a really hard time like accommodating that. And we want to allow for older commercial buildings to change over time by not mandating that a new business would like tear apart the ground floor to provide loading docks that are only required by regulation. Right now, you have that already for parking, that like, you know, you have maybe a business that has like a certain amount of parking spaces, and a slightly different type of business comes in that maybe has like a slightly higher parking requirement, but they won't have the space on their site to make that change. You always have to like chop down half the building, maybe to add like 5 more parking spaces to meet the requirement. That's already a rule right now that you do not have to do that. And we're doing like the same for loading docks because it's just like, you know, building a loading dock into an existing building is just like really expensive, and it doesn't like do much. The fifth proposal is that today zoning allows for many buildings to have a mix of residential and commercial uses, but zoning sometimes restricts businesses from being able to use upper floor, so like the second floor. And this limits options for new buildings to be built that contain both residences and businesses, or for older buildings to adapt over time. And we want to enable renovations or new construction of mixed-use buildings in these places where it makes sense by allowing commercial uses at the same level or above residences, provided that complete separation between uses is maintained. I think what you also see, for instance, on commercial, like a commercial street like Morris Park Avenue, or like other commercial strips, that you have like more of like a storefront on the ground floor, but like a medical office or like a I don't know, like a law office on the second floor. That's something that was historically allowed, but that zoning right now doesn't allow for it. So they would change that.
I think my only concern with that personally is so like will there be limitations to the type of businesses that would be allowed to operate over residences, right? Because I'm gonna be a little dramatic here, right? Let's say like there's a bakery store that's trying to be placed, that's trying to open above an apartment. Right? Will we that creates a lot of noise. That could also create a lot of, you know, big rats, pests, you know, all this other stuff. Are there gonna be limitations as to what businesses can operate on the higher floors?
Yeah. So I think the first thing, the most important thing is there needs to be separation from residential. And the other thing too is that like exactly the points or the things that you pointed out, there can be no thing as like noise or odor or whatever. There cannot be like a big like negative impact on those residences. But the thing is that like most important is it needs to be separated from residences, what means that you have to have like separate elevators. You need to have like separate, like it can be on the same floor, but you need to have a physical separation, like an actual wall. So you need like a much bigger building to be able to do that. I think most of it, what this tends to do is to allow for uses on the second floor and also allow something like in like bigger modern buildings, for instance, what you have is like maybe you have like a commercial ground floor and then you have like a rooftop. The rooftop is like a commercial use, but then they have like a separate elevator to go to the rooftop, so you don't have people going to the bar like on your corridor on the fourth floor.
So for buildings that are in existence today, right? Will they have to make those renovations in order for them to do something like that, or will it just primarily just be for the new building?
Yeah, and that's why it's this rule does allow for commercial on upper floors, but with those limitations, it will be hard to do that in like older and then smaller buildings because it's just like really hard to like have that separation on like a small floor.
Yeah, and you have to take into consideration, it has to be accessible.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the sixth one is to modernize use terms, and our zoning hasn't updated the terms it uses to classify businesses in more than 60 years, and it's full of old terms like stamp and coin stores, umbrella repair shops, and typewriter repair. And that makes it harder for newer businesses like the cell phone repair, something that didn't exist in 1961, to know where they can locate. And we're proposing to simplify and modernize the terms we use in zoning to classify businesses. I think that's just a little bit, like, just modernizing and a cleanup of everything that's listed there.
Right.
Okay. And then on to our second goal, to support growing industries by reducing obstacles in zoning for emerging business types. And each of the industries highlighted in the second goal, that's urban agriculture, life sciences, nightlife, amusements, and home-based businesses face ambiguity in the regulations or outdated restrictions in our zoning, and we want to address those obstacles so we can help emerging business types thrive across our city and create jobs across all 5 boroughs. So proposal number 7, urban agriculture, is like businesses that want to operate indoor agriculture facilities, such as vertical farming or hydroponics, within commercial areas now have a hard time or face uncertainty with today's zoning rules, and we would clarify that indoor agriculture is allowed in commercial districts, so more food can be grown closer to communities. Proposal 8, life science laboratories. They face confusing and outdated rules that slow the development of new facilities. That is, life sciences is maybe a little bit like of a catchphrase, but it's usually a mix of like normal office space, so like, like desk-bound work, and lab space. But it's like, because it also has lab space, it now like runs into a lot of restrictions of where they can be, even though like they kind of function like a normal office space. But we would make it clear that labs without potential for environmental hazard, so that like, they don't use like, chemicals or like certain like high-risk chemicals, are appropriate in office settings. And we would also expand where an existing special permit can be used, so labs may be able to locate closer to research centers like hospitals and universities.
There's no biohazard laboratories.
Sorry?
No biohazard laboratories.
Yeah, that's right. So they would go still in like a manufacturing district, which is that manufacturing districts are always separated from residential districts because you cannot build new homes in manufacturing districts. So that separation you wouldn't have for life science uses that are more like a normal office space, because right now you would have that kind of office space only in industrial areas.
So that urban agriculture area, that's like cannabis and things like that, right?
So for cannabis, so the zoning, okay, 2 things. So cannabis is regulated by the state with like the licenses and everything.
For agriculture, right? Yeah.
And then for agriculture, like the zoning for cannabis, we just defer to the state to regulate that.
Gotcha.
And the zoning doesn't like make any distinction between what is grown.
Okay.
So
Yeah, see, that's the issue.
Yeah, that's the issue, yeah.
It's one of
Yeah,
the-
that right there. That's not gonna work.
I wanna read farm area, actually.
A bunch of people growing it.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Regulate.
They ain't growing greens.
so like the state needs to issue licenses for you to be able to grow cannabis.
Cause the city currently has the six plant limit.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So like have you seen recommendations from other boards in a way to limit what type of
Well,
activities there?
so we have talked about this in other settings. You are the first board in the bonds to talk about this. So what I'm gonna do also.
Thinking really well. You think really well.
It's like what Hazel's,
We
you
think
know,
very
every
well.
other pocket's something.
Yeah,
So.
You see
you're
through,
trying to-
see through the line.
But it's much far different.
You have
Like
a
another
smart board here, trust me.
Putting that into law now.
Even the life sciences, like ethically, like who's
Thank you.
making sure that ethically we're making sure they're doing things that
What's the
are
standard?
not, out of bounds
Mhm.
scientifically.
We don't know the.
So I
we
asked
wanna-
you
we
that,
wanna
and you
outbreak.
might not know, but
Meth lab.
or whatever. Yeah,
Meth
meth
lab.
lab, whatever. So
Just saying.
something to bring back.
So I think like two things. I think what I'm gonna do also for sake of time is I'm gonna
Continue.
for our
Table this,
continued
table
conversation, we're gonna
table
talk about cannabis.
Okay.
But I just want to say, like, for both cannabis retail and for cannabis growing, that it would be the state to issue licenses, and the zoning would sort of be neutral to what is grown or to what is sold. That being said, there is like, of course, enforcement. So like a meth lab is not legal. Like,
Well, technically, right? Like, but you have to find. No, what I'm saying is that you have to find it. You have to find out it's a meth lab.
no, but yeah, of course. But like, I think there's still like the enforcement of rules. So life sciences, if a new life science lab would get built, they would have to get building permits from the Department of Buildings, who would look into whether like they would meet the requirements. I get your your concern, but like zoning, the enforcement of zoning is with the Department of Buildings. The enforcement of like criminal law and everything is with the NYPD and like the courts. Like there's a limit to what zoning does. That doesn't mean that your or that your concern doesn't exist. I'm not trying to say that, but
But you're asking us to trust the agency are going to do what they need to do. That's what the ask is.
I think I think they want us to push back so they can go back to where I get what can they go so far as. I think that's what this is.
That's
It's like,
not-
how far can we go without them
Like, probably
rebelling?
not gonna be.
If
so let's continue with the presentation. I'm gonna write this down. We're gonna talk about this more, just like with the other concerns that you've raised, and we can talk about them in more detail and focus on that.
You got it.
So for proposal number 9 is that restaurants and bars face confusing regulations whether they can host concerts, dancing, comedy shows, or open mic nights. And we're simplifying the rules so they're based on the size of a venue rather than the activity, so that you would see only small venues on neighborhood commercial corridors and larger venues in places like Midtown with different kind of zoning. So that would allow for dancing and live comedy shows in like restaurants and bars, like on more commercial streets throughout the city, or on all commercial
The
streets.
problem you have there is that the backs of these establishments are with residential areas. And I know that we've had problems with bars and many community boards, 8, 9, 10, 11 have complained that, the community residents around them, and these bars can be open till 4 a.m. according to New York State regulations. So, you're taking away the cabaret license now, so you're just letting these bars have free reign of what they can do.
But there may be issues
But,
with
like-
noise pollution there, so you have to think about it.
There
But
are
are you taking away the cabaret licensing or
that was me.
or are you?
yeah, the cabaret law is like, I think, revoked for some time.
Oh, okay, I thought you were like expanding.
No.
No, okay.
But yeah, I think again, like what came up about around cannabis too is the issue of enforcement and other regulations aside from zoning, so that you would still have things like, you know, like your liquor licensing that needs to go through your economic development committee. There are rules with DOB about, and there are rules with the fire department about fire safety and noise. So there are other rules still that are in place. I'm just going to note it down
Okay.
that urban agriculture and nightlife, that we need to discuss that in more detail.
Kadian just spoke about over East Glen Hill Road, where a lot of the businesses are, you know, open till 3 a.m. and they're like blasting music, right? So like, is there exceptions to prevent that type of, I guess, you know, or to crack down on that type of activities in like those high density, mostly residential areas?
Even a comedy club, you know, people laughing all night. Even though it's really nice, entertaining.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to bed at 12 o'clock. You know, it's
Yeah.
hard for me to.
No, I like
So that may be, even if it's a small bar that has a a live stand-up comedy,
Yeah.
that can be maybe. I mean, you just
No, I hear it. I think it's a thing that like
You made a
aside from this proposal, that is like a concern with restaurants and bars in any like
yeah,
residential
absolutely.
area.
You made a good point. If something were to come up for renewal in terms of a liquor license, maybe give the community boards more power to have control over that liquor license. If we've heard that the comedy club is open too long, or the club is open till 7 a.m. So that's something, that's a carrot for the stick, right?
That's a good trade-off.
As opposed for us just recommending and having no power in some cases, maybe we can have equal power in these cases. Just saying, instead of saying, no, we don't want to have this.
Right.
Well, it's up to us if we've heard that they're not being,
Good neighbor.
you're good neighbors.
Right. And they can
Just
be noise mitigation things. I'm an architect, so I know
Yeah.
that you can build things to can that be put into the process of, if you're going to do that, these are noise mitigation things that you can do to mitigate
have
the
to.
noise.
Yeah.
Some of
It's about traffic,
Yeah.
right? So that interferes with quality of life.
Mhm. Yeah, that's it.
All right. Again, wrote it down. We're going to talk about that more next time. For the proposal number 10,
Next one.
zoning has outdated terms for defining experiential amusement businesses like arcades for kids, but also virtual reality. And they very often restrict those kinds of businesses to Coney Island or to the city's industrial areas. Well, Coney Island is pretty far away. And we would simplify and modernize how zoning treats amusement and recreation to make clear that these businesses are allowed indoors and at a small scale on a neighborhood street, and at a larger scale in bigger commercial districts. Like for instance, the ones in like Midtown or downtown Brooklyn.
Mhm.
I like that one.
But smaller and indoor on like your normal like commercial street.
So that's like having more arcades and.
That's right.
But that's the same concerns of noise, traffic, all those things can be a concern with amusement. No, it's great. I think it's fantastic. I think virtual stuff is coming along the way, but you still have, if you still have residential people trying to get rest for the next day, teachers, whatever they are.
Yeah. No, I hear.
But I don't think arcades, like I went to an arcade in New Jersey,
Mhm.
they really close around, I want to say like 10, 12.
New Jersey.
Yeah, but
New York is,
I'm pretty sure they're the same thing.
New York City never sleeps.
Yeah, but there's one that I went to down in the village that it was, just arcade, and it was a bar.
Barcade.
Oh, Barcade.
That's what they call it. So
How
like,
late was it?
forget about it.
What's a bar?
What day was it? What day was it?
Yeah.
What day was it?
Hmm?
Was it like on a Saturday, Friday?
No, it was during the week. So,
It's New York City. New York City is different from.
Yeah.
All right, just to move on. Many New Yorkers, like this is like proposal number 11 around home occupations. Home occupations are allowed now too, but we want to update those rules to give more flexibility for New Yorkers to have businesses in their homes. And many New Yorkers start their businesses in their home, also due to the pandemic. And zoning allows for a wide range of home business types, including lawyers, jewelry makers, and music teachers. But you know, the pandemic changed a lot about how people work from home, and zoning hasn't kept up. So we still, through our zoning, we allow for a lot of different kind of home businesses, but we prohibit others, like barbers or interior decorators, and other restrictions that hold back business creation. So we're proposing to enable entrepreneurship and modern rules for home-based businesses, while keeping in place safeguards to ensure that any home business is a good neighbor. So that has to do with like traffic, the number of people who work there. So it's like a home occupation. It's still a home, and a part of that home is like used for like their home occupation. It's not where like 10 people go to work. It's not where like signage is outside, but it's like a home occupation.
No, that's fine when you do that, right? So you're talking about even apartment buildings, right? People who live in an apartment. And we live in an apartment building where someone did a hair salon on the floor below us.
Yeah.
And just the fumes that just kept coming upstairs. Very difficult to
Yeah.
read sometimes because they were doing the hair and the nail. And we would complain. We would complain and, you know, call police, and they would tell me, you can't do it, you're not allowed to have a business on there.
Yeah.
Now you're allowing it, which is fine, right? So what mitigations are you gonna put in place for example? And they may have to install an HVAC system where it exchanges the air, so it leaves things like that.
I think it's just like sorry.
That's okay.
I got
his hands up. I'm sorry about that.
That's all I'm saying. Just think
Excuse
about it.
me, hi, I would like to say something because before we move on, I know before we move on to the next page, I just want to say hello, Tuned. Nice to see you. And also thank you, Hazel and Rich, for this. I wanted to just go back before we move forward. I've been gathering a few of my questions, and I have something that needs clarity. I just wanted to say, Hazel, with regards to the letter that came from the Brooklyn Community Board 11, they already had their presentation with their housing and land use, and what they had seen is that there were many questions that were not given specific answers. And given that the heart of our 60 days is 30 days of that is coming off of the heart of the holiday. Many people aren't around, they're visiting families, and it's going to be taking away from the important time that really is needed here. So the letter did go out, and I had sent it to all the board members to say, please give me your input, because I would like to know if this is something that we as Community Board 11 should sign on to. And given that it's in the middle of coming from Thanksgiving to Christmas, Hanukkah, etc., into New Year's, that we should, with something this important, we should be allowed to have the extra 30 days that would bring us to the end of January. So I just wanted to bring the clarity of that. And that letter was sent around by email to all the board members. So that was my first, question. So Toon, this is the question for you. You know, I've been involved with this since the 2016, 2017. And with the city planning workshops, which I went to all of them, there was community input, which was very similar to the current workshops that were hosted by the city council. So are you gathering all of the previous information and the current information, the ideas from the community of the amenities that they're requesting, the things that they feel are important that are needed, which are amenities? There's so many things that were taken from the previous workshops and this workshop, and I just want to make sure that those ideas, which were wonderful, are noted, or do we need to rehash them again? So that's...
Yeah, I think we're talking there about workshops around the Bronx Metro North station area city, correct?
Yeah, the workshops that were the previous workshops. I spoke to Michael on October 3rd, and he was saying that the workshops that were happening now were were basically based off the first workshops to get more input, but they were hosted by the city council members. Am I correct?
Yeah, that is right. But just for everyone like here and on a call, just like to be clear, what we're now talking about has to do with the Bronx Metro North Station area study and not directly with what like the presentation that I'm giving right now about a citywide
Okay.
change to the zoning. And it's a good question. We have on our website. So this is again about Bronx Metro North Station area study. We'll have, as I said before, we have a bigger public event later this month to go into detail about that, about the public review process that is coming. But yes, we have recorded all the input before that has led to recommendations. And yeah, we have notes and like everything that was like, issued in terms of comments. We have all like recorded that. But yeah, again, I maybe just want to put a pin in the Bronx Metro North Station area study, just recognizing what I said before. We have a bigger event for not just Community Board 11, but also for 9 and 10, and we're also involved most likely later this month. And I will, of course, give an update to Community Board 11 as to when that is scheduled for.
Great.
Thank you. And my last question has to do with what you just talked about with the zoning. So the changes and the modifications of the zoning, is that going to dictate, that will dictate to the current property owners? Has there been a discussion between the changes and the current property owners? Or is that happening now, the back and forth with the current property owners?
Yeah, I can say a couple of things about that. Is that first of all, our proposal tends to update rules and maybe also be more lenient in certain ways so that property owners would not like face like a new restriction on what they can do.
Okay.
In general, also what zoning does, it more regulates like new things that are happening, like a new store that gets built, a new business that goes in somewhere. Like we talked about that just now before, like a lot of commercial uses that are very old are like grandfathered. That's why you have like corner stores in areas that are zoned residential and wouldn't allow for commercial uses. So in general, new zoning does not impact like existing buildings or existing uses. In terms of engagement, we have done a lot of engagement with like the Bronx Chamber of Commerce, with the bids, including the Morris Park bid, to also better understand their needs and also for them to like speak on behalf of the businesses located there to, see if there is any like issues that we can solve more than like us coming up with new restrictions for businesses.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Miguel?
No, can we just leave the
Yeah, I
questions
agree.
for later and keep on?
Finish
up.
with the presentation?
We're almost done, guys.
Sorry, guys.
Thank you.
All right, we're at
We'll get to you guys. I just want to.
12 of 18. So
Yeah, but we have a lot.
we're 2/3 in.
12, yeah.
So yeah, that is about home occupations. Just oral for, what you said. Like yeah, there are restrictions.
Wait.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep talking. But there are restrictions as in like noise and odor, so that like if you have like a business that is located in someone's home, that if they don't meet those restrictions, like then you can go to the Department of Buildings to have that enforced.
No, when, like, if, for example, let's say I own a nail and a hair salon.
Yeah.
My wife does it, right? And now this is, oh, great, I'm gonna be able to legalize that, right? Do I, as the owner, have to go through a process to make sure that my space that I'm using meets the requirement of whatever the new requirements are, so I'm not impacting, like I am now, my neighbors upstairs?
Oh, okay. I see your point. I don't believe there's like a formal approval process, also because there's so many people that work from
Right,
home.
I understand.
So it would be more as in like, it will be more like an enforcement thing than something that gets like approved
To
upfront.
get a permit
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
like, for legalizing my space now.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
Yeah,
no, I get
That's
what you
fine,
mean.
that's fine.
Yeah.
I just wanted to understand, but maybe you could look into that, please.
Is this
That'd be great.
geared more towards daycare?
Any
Is
any
it
home
the
business.
sense of the city catching up with the state? Because you have so many daycares within apartment structure.
I
The not monitor, I won't say monitor, but just more making it formal legally.
I'll look into that. I have, my first reaction is that like a childcare center is not a home occupation.
But some people will make it out, they do it out their home.
Yeah, I think that is for something that has a different
You have to
reason.
go to regulation.
Is that childcare
Yeah,
center,
but it's not zoned.
childcare centers are considered a community facility use, and community facility use is also like churches and like, educational facilities are generally allowed in all residential districts. So that's not a home occupation, but it's like you can have, it's permitted to have a childcare center in like a
In a home.
residential building. Yes.
And it's inspected by a group that comes by to see if you have the right egress and space to hold as a childcare, because my neighbor did that and he
Yeah.
had to have it inspected by, I forget what group, but.
Yeah, I think it's like also the state and the
Yeah,
city
yeah,
that
they did
inspect that and
inspect it.
license that for like safety and, but, have a
Egress
safe space
and,
for your
just
kids.
in case you have, there's an emergency, there's two ways to get out of the basement.
Yep. So then goal 3, I'll move a little faster. No. These are all good questions. I think it just like, sort of hits home the point. Let's meet again. So goal number 3, foster vibrant neighborhoods. The first one is to promote better ground floor designs. So to have not on commercial street, long blank walls on active commercial streets with a lot of activity, have like a drive-through that really changes the character of that street. Proposal number 13 is to reduce conflicts with auto repair. And auto servicing and repair businesses are normally treated like industrial businesses, but you have certain rules that are not about like heavy auto repair, but about like maybe changing tires, changing mirrors, changing windows, changing car seats. And usually that is allowed in your commercial street. But what you often see is that those uses spill out into the street and onto the sidewalk, and then like have a negative impact on like that whole commercial strip or your neighborhood commercial street. So what we're proposing to do is to rationalize and consolidate the range of auto servicing uses and zoning into 2 categories: light and heavy vehicle repair and maintenance. The heavy vehicle maintenance must be licensed by the state DMV. That's already the case. It's not something we're doing now, but like that's already there. That you have the green plaques on the auto repair shops, and that would continue to be allowed in industrial areas like it is right now. For instance, on Blondell, on Boston Road, that's all how it's zoned right now. And light vehicle repair could locate elsewhere, but they have to get a permit from the BSA. And an important part there is that they need to show a site plan that they can actually accommodate cars on their own property and not on the sidewalk or into the street. I think, you're probably familiar because you have those areas like near you on Boston Road, you have it on East Gun Hill Road, you have it on Blondell, you have it on East Tremont Avenue.
So the BSA, the Board of Standards and Appeals.
Yeah, that's right.
Everyone to know it. So they'll now monitor the small auto repair.
Yeah, so that will be for new ones. So again, like existing uses like that, they can continue to be in that location. It will not certainly be different, but if a new, like, let's say like a tire change will want to open up on Mooresburg Avenue, then they would have to get a permit from the BSA, and they would have to show that like you can accommodate, I don't know, like X number of cars on your site. So usually you would not have this like just a storefront and no like, no like surface parking lot or anything to deal with.
What do you do about service stations that have a combination of gas and the auto repairs?
That is a really good question. I do not have the answer to that.
Because you have a lot of stations that.
Yeah, they have
a
both,
gas
yeah.
station, and my understanding that currently, if you want to have the auto repair, you at a gas station, that's the auxiliary use for the gas station. Is the order, and they're actually heavy repairs because they've all got auto car lifts and everything else.
Yeah, that's a good question also, because I need to look into that, because gas stations are also generally only allowed in industrial zones. And there is a permit also for gas stations to be located in other areas. But I'll look into that, Ken. I don't have the answer to that right now.
Now, in the sense zoning them out of the, that makes it inconvenient for people.
Oh, it's not, it's for new businesses to locate in commercial areas. It's not for existing businesses.
What you're doing is, in the sense, you're giving an unwarranted premium to the people that have now, because they'll be able to get it, but they won't be able to get competitors in there now. Again, about the whole thing with gas.
Would they be able to get?
Maybe you could just look into the whole thing with gas stations, because that is an, that's a.
I mean, they could still go into all the areas where all the auto repair is, where they mostly tend to cluster anyway.
I'll give you an example of two of them on Williamsbridge Road, Williamsbridge Road and I think it's Lydic, and the Williamsbridge Road and Neil, I think.
Yep.
You've got two gas stations. One of them now is a convenience store instead of the auto repair, the lift. The other one's still got an auto repair. White Plains Road and Astor Avenue, same thing. What are you gonna do about the gas stations because that's heavy auto repair.
Yeah, so if they are in like a manufacturing zone or in a C8 zone, which most of these like areas, these like Boston Road are zoned as, but I need to look into like what it means for a gas station to be outside of those zones with an auto repair.
Thank you.
The other one, proposal 14, is that zoning does not allow for delivery activity within buildings except in industrial areas, forcing activity to occur on sidewalks and streets. And we're proposing to create a new type of use in zoning called a micro distribution facility. And those are pretty small. It's like 2,500 or 5,000 square foot, which is basically a normal storefront on a commercial street, and allow these businesses to locate a small scale in commercial areas, encouraging deliveries to shift to alternative modes of transportation and regulating the creation of local hubs for safe and sustainable deliveries to occur. I'm gonna speed up a little bit. If there are real concerns about this one, I'd like to hear it now, and then I know that I can focus on.
So how does that, all right, so let's
What do you
say,
think is wrong with 14?
is this the parking, is this him, okay, all right.
No,
It's, to me, it's the space, it's the parking, it's the loading zones, like how does that all, like how does that look in practicality?
Okay, that's a good question. I do not know like how it's gonna look in terms of like the loading itself.
Because like there are some streets where it's like it's so small, like for example, on Liebig, for example, Liebig, White Plains, going up that street, right?
It's already double parked.
Double parking. It doesn't have the space, for example, for that. So
Yeah.
I would love to know, how does that look in practicality?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. So for 14, the goal here is to create new opportunities for local businesses to open. And the first one is on campus commercial. Many large-scale residential developments, such as NYCHA campuses, are zoned as residence districts, meaning that retail services and maker spaces cannot easily locate there, and placing residents of these developments further away from local goods and services. This proposal would create an approval process with the City Planning Commission to allow for 15,000 square foot of commercial space in existing or the new construction on a large-scale residential campus, giving residents greater access to basic necessities or the space to grow a new business. So this is on campuses. So this is, aside from NYCHA and Community District 11, you don't have a lot of other residential campuses that are not NYCHA, but you could like think about, the ones on like Parkside or like Pelham Parkway, those NYCHA campuses. But, just across the border in Community Board 9, for instance, like Parkchester is like a non-NYCHA residential campus that would like be affected by this proposal. But it's more to get services closer to where a lot of residents live, that is all zoned residential and no commercial can be there.
Wait,
Yeah.
so you're saying that it's gonna allow like somebody to open up a business within the NYCHA complex?
Well, yeah, in a commercial storefront, so not in like a home, but like in,
No, yeah.
like for instance, what you see here, but like maybe a better example, on East Fremont Avenue, like Parkchester, and you have all the residential buildings, but you have on East Fremont Avenue, you have like a grocery store and whatever. Like, you think about that as like an example. So it's more to like serve. It's like like those campuses are really big and all zone commercial, so they don't really have like a commercial street nearby. But it's to allow for like 15,000 square feet of commercial, just to have like a deli or a grocery store be located closer to where like a lot of people then live in those campuses.
So then Eastchester Gardens, if I wanted to build a supermarket within that area, I could do so.
Yeah, it would need to be approved by city planning commission, and it need to stick to that limit of 15,000. So that will be like a small grocery store.
Does NYCHA have the same is NYCHA under the same regulations as every other zone, or is it like the state, which is totally exempt from regulation?
No, it's it is it needs to comply with zoning. I think what you'll see is that a lot of NYCHA campuses were built before the zoning resolution from 1961 and came into place, because a lot of NYCHA campuses were built also in the 40s and in the 50s. But there is zoning and any like new development, but like, you know, NYCHA campuses are like not a lot of new development, because they were sort of like built according to a plan like 60 years ago.
Yeah, yes, back when Parkway House in 1949, 50.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I'm sorry, if I wanted to take a section, right, so like in Eastchester, you have a certain amount of square footage that no one does anything, it's just grass. Back in the days, they used to play football on it.
Yeah.
So I can, through NYCHA, right, working with NYCHA, I can say, you know what, let me build a supermarket inside the complex.
That's right.
To benefit the neighborhood.
That's right.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think that's a really good comment, actually. Like, it is city-owned land with NYCHA. So when it's like specifically about NYCHA, it's not just like, okay, like you're putting in building permits, you're building a store, like you have to like go through the property owner, which is at NYCHA. So that's like going to be a whole city thing. But same for like Parkchester. I know it's not in Community District 11, but it's really close. Like you would have to go through like the condominium board and everything there to order to get that done. The next one is corner stores. So some portions of New York City are not within walking distance of a local retail store like a bodega, and zoning has no pathways to potentially allow for a small new locally serving business to open. And we're creating a pathway, again, like through an approval process, where a business could start a process to locate a new corner store, provided that the store does not generate any environmental concerns or traffic congestion, and would also be something that would have to be approved by the city planning commission, and also the community board would weigh in on that.
Okay, great. Awesome. If I see the problem with that also.
Yep, I'll write that down.
Yeah. It's the small shops. The really small shops being created off of that.
Then proposal 17 is for allowing to adapt spaces for industries like film. And that is because in some instances, businesses lack options to waive certain zoning rules. And that is usually for business that are not like every other business, like a film studio that has certain requirements about very large, very like high ceilings in order to do their business. So film studios often struggle to build sound stages because of certain zoning rules like heights. Or a clothing store might want to expand to occupy an empty second floor, but might find that there are location rules that prevent them from doing so. And we're creating a pathway for those businesses to initiate a process where they can get like a waiver for those zoning rules on a case-by-case basis, and just to like provide a little bit of like a safety valve for a zoning resolution, because not all these businesses, some businesses are pretty unique in what they need in terms of space, and we cannot like write zoning in such a way that we upfront can accommodate everything. So there's like sort of a pathway to get an approval if there's something unique. Proposal 18, and that's the last one. And then I'll go through some maps, and that will like map specifically for Community District 11, because that will make it a little bit clearer about like the areas like impacted by certain proposals. But this is the last one. So in some instances, it's our zoning districts. So we have manufacturing districts or M districts and zoning regulations there in your manufacturing areas. And a lot of them are right now like low density options, like 1-story manufacturing or industrial buildings. But we don't really have the rules anymore that allow for like the loft buildings that you see on the screen that were built like before 1961, you know, the ones that you can see downtown, but also in other areas, is like the more like bulky buildings instead of like the 1-story more spread out manufacturing buildings, like you know, like the distribution centers that you see
Sort of
today.
like Industry City in Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's right. Like, yeah, Industry City, Brooklyn Navy Yard, like all those loft buildings would not be really allowed right now. But those are types of buildings that would house a lot of workers and are more like job intensive buildings. And so what we want to do is like, we want to create new zoning districts that allow again for those loft buildings that you saw built in like the 19th century, early 20th century. But the thing is that we have new zoning districts that we create in our zoning resolution, but they're not mapped anywhere in the city. So we just give an option for in the future that someone comes in, again, through an application that would go through the ULURP as we did the training on earlier tonight, that would then like map the district where those rules would apply. So this is not changing what can get built in existing manufacturing districts. So it's not that you suddenly have a completely different building or like something new would be allowed, but it would be a new zoning district that is just not, you cannot find it on the map after. It still needs to get mapped somewhere, and that would be a whole new ULURP application in and of itself.
Wow.
But it just creates the option.
Interesting.
So right now, a little bit about existing conditions, and we're just going to wrap up a little quicker. So this is Community District 11. We have maps for every community district, also for Community District 11. I think this has a lot of information. So what you see here is that CB11 right now, based on our data, has 37,000 jobs. That is 92% of what was here pre-COVID. And well, as you know, you have a lot of big institutions within Community District 11. You have like Jacobi Hospital, you have Montefiore Hospital, you have a big Con Edison site. So that accounts for a lot of the institutional jobs. Then in total, you have over 1,700 storefronts. And I think that's a really positive data point there, is that your vacancy throughout your community district is lower than the Bronx overall and New York City. You can see like the dots is like the ones that are open are vacant, but you can see that your commercial corridors, you can see the dots, like you can see Morris Park Avenue sort of towards the bottom and Bronxdale. You can see White Plains Road and Williamsbridge Road, Allerton Avenue and Boston Road. You see in certain areas like more vacant storefronts, but in general, you know, you have a really good occupancy rate. And that's like in different categories. So it's like services, in terms of services, like that can be like a barber shop, that can be whatever, a nail salon, exactly. Retail is more like a store where you buy goods. Food and drink, well, speaks for itself. And community facilities can be something like a educational facility or a church. So this is a little bit of a snapshot of Community District 11, and you can see really clearly sort of the commercial corridors that run through your community district. Then the maps, and again, you'll have like access to this presentation, and we'll go over this again. But this is just in yellow, you see the residential districts, and you see in sort of the pink purple color the manufacturing districts. And then you have the C1, C2 are those sort of like reddish blocks. I have more maps that just focus on that one, but just gives like one map of all the different districts that are.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So the big pink area to the right is Hutch Metro Center and Eastchester Road and Blondell Avenue to the south, and then the Con Edison facility at the very bottom, opposite of Parkchester. No problem.
This slide, the data from this slide, sorry, the data from this slide and from last slide, from Live XYZ, right?
Yeah. So this one, you can see it here at the bottom, and it's like a little hard to read for people who are at home on their screen. But this is all data from New York State Department of Labor, Live XYZ snapshot that was like we got that earlier last month, October 17th. So yeah, that's all like publicly available.
Because I know I have access to it, but is Live XYZ also accessible from the public?
I'll check in on that.
Okay. Because if so, then I guess I know Edgar just asked about that. It would be great to look at the breakdown of the economics of our district.
Yeah. So this is just overall, and this is then specific for each proposal. So you see here on the left, like we don't have time to go through everything, but like you'll see here the proposals listed, and a short description, and how they affect C1 districts. So for C1 districts, you can see it's mostly Morris Park Avenue, it's Leidig Avenue, it's Allerton Avenue. You can all see like what areas are affected by these proposals. And luckily, well, C2 is slightly different corridors. You can see here is a lot of like White Plains Road north of Pelham Parkway, East Gun Hill. It's a little less than what we saw before. You see a little bit on East Fremont Avenue at the very southern end there. So here again, you'll see the proposals listed. I think this is good maybe to go over, just, you know, take another look, but this is like how everything is affected by this proposal and what areas. This is C4. C4 is very limited. C4 is like a commercial district. Like C1 and C2 is very much on neighborhood commercial streets. C4 is like really more about like higher density commercial districts. So you have a little bit on White Plains Road. You have then the blue spot to the like bottom right, that is Hutch Metro Center. And the very top, there's only one business there, and that's Home Depot. So that's very limited. And then, so here again, you'll see what proposals affect these districts. C5 and C6, I can be very quick about because those are not mapped in Community Board 11.
That's interesting.
Doesn't exist.
C5 and C6 are very like high density commercial areas. So it's like where a lot of the office crowd is. So you'll see that in, for instance, like the hub is I think C6. But otherwise, in other areas where you'll see is like, you know, like Midtown or, you know, like that I like original. Exactly.
Go on, but so,
So let me ask you something. I'm sorry. You said
Who's what?
going back to where you said Home Depot. So that stretch of land that's on the opposite side, that's MTA. That's considered part of,
Like the bus depot?
no, where the old golf course used to be.
That's Ward 12.
is it?
Yeah.
So that, do you know what zone?
No, I I do not.
Okay.
And to Bob's point, that's then just on the other
I
side.
think it's
of
right
the-
across the street from.
It's right across.
Yeah.
That's why the fight is with that.
So C5 and C6 are not like, well, we all know that like our district is like most of the district is residential. But what you see like the C1 and C2, we call that commercial overlays. Those are mapped across like those commercial streets. So Morris Park Avenue, for instance, here, like based on this, you think, oh, it's all residential, but like it has the
Within that,
zoning
yeah.
to allow for commercial businesses. And these are the end districts. So that's like more to the southern end of the district. I mentioned that before.
Yep. This is great.
And then the last one, special purpose districts, which are also, there are no special purpose districts mapped in Community Board 11. So with all that, there's a timeline, 60-day review. We've talked about that before. I think
Did that start today?
so the thing is actually right now we're even like before the 60-day because
Okay, good.
what is maybe you weren't there yet for that part, but like it has to get referred out by the City Planning Commission, and then all the materials need to get sent out to the community board. That takes a little bit of time to like send out everything. I don't think it's been sent out yet. So the 60-day like clock hasn't even like started as of today. So we're at the very front of it all. So yeah, the 60-day review would like probably go into like early January.
And this is for the econ stuff,
In the new year, yep.
the economic development.
Oh, where does it land?
Right? Or
Yeah, this is just a specific timeline for this specific proposal. As I said, like for Bronx Metro North Station area study, we'll do what we call like a pre-referral or pre-certification online event and information session before that 60-day review starts and before it's certified by the City Planning Commission to give everyone a heads up about how to participate. But that's a different project.
Yeah, because so this one is just economic opportunity one.
Yep.
The carbon neutral is done already.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can tell because it's on the buildings already.
yeah, you see it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on my bill.
Yeah.
So I think what we should do is just like stay in touch about like what like a follow-up would look like.
You may need to come back twice.
I think so.
He's like, oh no, I'm not coming back twice.
I have like a lot of questions, but I didn't want to bog down the presentation today with. Is there any way that I could email you my questions and hope
Yeah.
that you could answer them?
Yeah, sure.
Do you have a
So
card that you could give us or me or something?
I do not have a card, but I think that everyone should have my, or not everyone, but like your committee chair should have my email. I think if you,
have it, right? He has it.
I think what could be good is if you bundle the questions and then I can just like, I can just respond in one go and like in like a document to keep track of everything.
So who's gonna bundle the
So I
questions?
guess,
Who should I send my questions?
well, Miguel, Camelia, I think what we'll get, can you guys just email your questions to us and we'll send it to June?
Hazel's
Yeah.
gonna bundle, Hazel's gonna bundle the
Yeah.
questions.
Yes, and does everybody have my email address?
I do.
Well,
Just in
I-
the chat?
Miguel has.
Can't hear you.
Just in the chat?
I've been waiting a while.
Sure, no problem.
Everyone has the email. Yeah.
I don't know.
We've got, if anybody wants to, Tune, did I pronounce it correctly?
Sorry.
Tune, how to,
Then that's good.
it's e-ruling,
Yeah.
planning.nyc.
No, Hazel's gonna bundle. the
Yeah, I
questions.
think it's easier to keep track than I don't have, like, the thing is like, if I don't answer one question, it's also nice for everyone else to take sort of note of
Because
what
Hazel
was
can go through
the
it
question and
and
answer.
eliminate the repeat
I'm just
questions.
asking, you get all this data emailed to us, right?
Like the
I had
maps.
four that I can smash together if you'd like.
Sorry, what was that?
I had four if I can smash them together if you'd
No,
like.
can you send them to Hazel
Yes.
and then she'll bundle all the questions and send them over to Mike?
Sure.
He'll respond, thanks.
But these are gonna go to the board, right? Like full board?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let it go through, because you'll be able to answer a lot of the questions. I have a lot of questions too. I'm gonna send them over to Hazel.
Yeah, let's do that. And then, of course, we wanted to have a public hearing.
Yeah.
And Malcolm suggested we have another committee meeting.
Right.
Yeah, so we have to pick a date.
Yeah.
Available because we got Thanksgiving and stuff coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll let you.
Yeah, well, we can talk offline about what a good means.
If we want to have a community board, if we want to have a board vote on this, it's got to be either in November or December, and that's the other problem. And to have, you can't have the November one, because that's gonna be too early.
That's too soon, yeah?
That's gonna be too soon.
Yeah.
But I think before then, I think the most important thing is that we get on the board as a committee.
Yep.
So that when you're at full board, we live cohesive.
Yeah, if you have one side
All
for you.
understand,
Right.
so that we can
Yeah.
ask, answer questions accordingly.
So we do have this letter from
Yeah.
Brooklyn. Have they ever extended to a time limit?
It might have happened in the past, it was before my time. I'm not aware of that. Well, I had a decision, this is above my pay grade.
No, but I mean, I'm just curious because if,
With the commercial businesses in the area, there was never a meeting to explain this.
You said it, yeah?
Yeah.
No, this is the first time,
The
right?
first time that.
So that,
at the
that
board
should
session,
be
yeah.
from committee.
Can we make an event like that with you?
well, I think,
Well, this is a public meeting though.
Well, yeah, and so like just on that, we've had like directed outreach at businesses and business organizations, for instance, like with the Morris Park bid too,
Right.
who then like speak on behalf of their constituent businesses.
But it's different when
It-
the
it is-
community board
yeah, no, it
steps
is different.
up and says,
Yeah.
businesses in my district, we're hosting a meeting specifically for you.
yeah, but that's,
So that it can be explained.
that's exactly what we're, no, that's
And
exactly.
you're not
why we're
answering
having a
questions.
public Hearing,
Yeah.
so that we can bring, the community
So-
together and
So could we,
explain everything that's going on. We will outreach to all the businesses
could we
and all
partner
the
with
landlords and
Camelia?
everything.
Because Camelia's here, so if we did a joint meeting with her.
I mean, Camila has her hand up, so.
No, it's
Camelia?
Yes. Hi, guys. Can I say something?
sure.
Yeah, sorry. I have a weird voice because I've been actually sick all day. So, but first, let me just start by thanking this man for hosting a 2-hour marathon. He spoke for 2 hours straight, and he was amazing in addressing very sensibly all questions and everything. So just wanted to start with that. Um, Second, just wanted to remind everyone how to say all these City of Yes proposals, which are the three of them, right? The carbon neutrality, housing, and economic opportunity. They in with respect to CB11, they are also going in parallel with this whole Metro North process. So I think it's important for CB11 to keep in mind how these all come together specifically to our area, and is specifically on economic opportunity. How to say, the two new stations, Morris Park and Van Ness Park Chester, are expecting to bring about significant change. So I would argue with you to look at this in terms of what is the opportunity for the community board to help shape how these corridors that are now heavily industrial around us could be shaped in a way that serves the community. So my suggestion number one to the committee, to the land use committee and CB11 and the resolution you would bring forward as a board would be again to provide these people, and I'm by these people I mean city planning, constructive ideas and to provide them your concerns along with recommendations for alleviating those concerns, right? So think about this as an opportunity to bring the neighborhood forward, giving the significant infrastructure changes that are obviously taking place. And one recommendation, I'm sorry, if I may, and I will close to the Department of City Planning. I mean, as you can see, sorry guys, as you can see, people raise a lot of because this is not Midtown Manhattan, right? It's not high density. And I can see the same type of questions that are raised by CB11, also in CB8 and in other Bronx community boards. There is a strong symbiosis between the commercial corridor and the residential aspect. And if you notice, people are not necessarily reacting to the actual zoning text proposal, but they have concerns related to enforcing of potential quality of life matters, violations. So what I would suggest is to have like a frequently asked questions for all those questions related to cannabis, noise, food traffic, etc., etc. There are in fact questions of DOB, Department of Buildings, Department of Transportation, DEP, all these things that will be related to the DCP proposal. So I mean, I don't know. I know you will hear again all of this, but again, I recommend to preempt a lot of discussion to actually have a fact sheet with the biggest things that you heard this evening, which I think are very relevant in having neighborhoods that are good for business and good for residents. So thank you again. This is what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you very much. Great idea, Camila. Great ideas.
So
That's good.
how many people got back to you about the committee?
Oh, I have Edgar, I have D1, I have Angel, Ed. That's about 4 people.
I wanted to. I
5, 6. We have 6 people in the committee.
Bernadette wanted
Oh,
to.
Jeremy,
Oh yeah, that's 7.
Yeah. Okay.
That's 7. Oh, we have Wendy. That's 8.
Okay, so then we should have a meeting.
Agreed.
Yes, and so if possible.
What meetings? Let's do it.
Hey.
I'm down.
So like about like next steps, I think also like what in the end, like the motion that is put in front of like the full board meeting. I think what is also important, like we saw there's like a list of 18 proposals. During the ULUG training at the start of the evening, I've said like recommendations that are concrete and like specific are very helpful. So there are 18 proposals in there. If there are any of those 18 proposals that are not supported by Community Board 11, I would recommend that you point that out, which part of the proposal like does not have your support and which parts of the proposal do have community board 11
Would you be able to
support.
Send us that slide presentation.
Yeah. You should all have the presentation. I can resend that.
Yeah.
I can also share like a resource that just has all the proposals in one.
I have it now, hold on.
Yeah, you have it,
I'll
and
share it.
yeah, like I sent it to you as well. I sent it like at 5 o'clock because I was bringing it myself.
You need all 18 to live though,
think
right?
we
You
can
can't
afford
live
to.
without 18.
Looking forward to.
So
Okay.
it's a proposal that covers 18, but like, you know, there's decision making around all 18.
So it's not 18 or die.
No, so it's also what I like. That is why it's important to hear from the 59 community boards. Like, if let's say there's one proposal that everyone's like we hate that. That is a very
There's a lot of background
understand
conversation taking
recommendations.
place. There's a
Sorry.
lot of background thank you. I'd like to listen to Tim.
I
So
think
my question was, is it 18 or die? Like, do you need to pass all 18 at the board? He's saying depends what the flavor of all the boards are, depending, and then they'll go back and decide.
so. Just for community board 11, just in your recommendation, outline which of those 18 proposals have your support and which don't.
Well, that's Malcolm's committee is gonna figure that out.
Yeah,
Our
but
committee.
That's your committee.
We'll give you input, Vern.
No, but we'll recommend that to all community boards in the city because there are gonna be 59 recommendations and those need to be just like, in order to inform the decision-making process, they better like be like clear and concise because it's like easier than like figuring out like, you know, people are not gonna watch back like a 3-hour recording about like what was said during the meeting, so, you know.
Okay, excellent. Great job.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank
Remember-
you so much.
Any questions, please email Hazel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
My email-
Hazel can compile all of this, and so it's not coming from a lot, you know, same questions may be repeated.
Yeah,
So,
I put my email in the chat. Or if you don't, if you could just get it from Jeremy, if you don't see it or whatever. So, it's
919.
9:19, so can I get somebody to?
Second. A second.
We have a motion first. It's one.
No, he said to
Somebody should
adjourn,
make
I
a
said
motion
second
first,
original.
Yeah, I want to make a motion to adjourn,
Second.
second by Oro.
Welcome, everybody.
Damn, Laurel.
Okay.
I go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning and.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for coming, for showing up online and for showing up in person.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
I've been long on.
Good night.
Oh, you